Welcome back, players! After 3 weeks of testing the Lemon Lime Aggro deck, I've narrowed it down to the list that I have before me, and I think this will be my final cut for the deck. I think it performs consistently enough that I'm happy with it, and it performs well against the decks I needed to perform well against. So with that in mind, let's jump right into the deck tech itself and start with the couple changes that I've made. I haven't made many since my last video, but there has been a couple, so let's get into those. Alright, so in regards to the 1-drops, we are still running 18. However, unlike my previous video, we have cut the ladies down from 4 to 3 and added a copy of Curse Merfolk. And this was done purely for consistency. Having a lady in hand, I still think lady's a good card, but having a lady in hand without a tramp just feels bad. So I've cut it down to 3 and added the 1 copy of Curse Merfolk. And for the 2-drops, I actually shook this up quite a bit. I cut out the 4 piglets and replaced it with the 4 Lilos, Escape Artist. I acquired 4 copies of Escape Artist prior to this video. I only had 3 copies, so it just made more sense to run the piglet. But now that I cut those out and added the Lilos, it also changed up a little bit more of the deck later on, and you'll see that. But I've added the 4 Lilos. We're still running 3 Tamago, as I think that's just a great card for automatic lore, and that's something this deck really needs. Especially because your opponent has to remove our board. They have to deal with our threats, otherwise we are just way too fast. And that means their characters are going to have damage. So Tamago is great for automatic lore. Now I've also added 2 copies of Stitch, Little Trickster. This is just a hard card to deal with, and it really makes your opponents hesitate a little bit, as I could just take a turn off from playing a card, buff Stitch, and just remove anything, depending on how much lore ink I have. And that's just a great option to have. It makes your opponent play a little bit awkward around it, so I like that. We have cut Tramp, just like Lady, from 4 to 3, just again to add a little bit of consistency. And we are obviously still running 4 copies of Ursula Deceiver, as this is probably the best 2-drop for green. Alright, so in regard to the 3-drops in this deck, I have cut Dale out and replaced it with 4 copies of Prince Philip. Prince Philip kinda does the same thing. Dale has a little bit more survivability, but it does enter Exerted, which isn't the best. It can also be targeted by actions, so I don't like that. Prince Philip is a 3/2 with Ward. I don't like the 2 willpower. I have to admit, I built this deck for mostly survivability, with 3 or 4 willpower as a minimum. But the Ward really makes the difference, and that's just what I need. I need something to survive actions, and Prince Philip does that. Now we are still running 4 copies of Captain Hook. This is my favorite card in the deck. It overperforms against steel decks, and it's just a great addition to this. 2 copies of Perla, just to help us buff our high willpowered characters to remove the board a little bit. Alright, so for the 4-drops, we are still running 2 copies of Lucky. This card is amazing in this deck. It synergizes well with all our high questing characters. In most cases, when I play Lucky, unless my characters can almost certain survive until the next turn, I'm going to take that turn off. And then I will have more than enough characters to activate Lucky's ability and quest with everything and get so far ahead that your opponent almost does not stand a chance. And we're still running 4 copies of Rapunzel, as this is obviously probably one of the best cards in the game, and it's our main draw engine. We are sticking with 3 copies of Lady. It's just a great way to get cards back, especially if you need ink. You can bring back a card like Nala, ink it, and then play whatever. And we are also running 1 copy of Stitch Rockstar. Now, we're running this as to not be so dependent on Lucky and Rapunzel for draw. And we have the shift option in the Little Trickster, so that's why we're running 1 copy. If anything, I can ink it. It's not uninkable, so I don't have to worry about that as much. So it's not a bad card to have in the deck. Alright, so as we have cut out Piglet and replaced it with Escape Artist Lilo, I had to add back the Tramps, as Lilo Escape Artist synergizes well with Tramp. You can play Tramp, discard, hopefully you could discard a Lilo, and then you can always bring that back the next turn. That's great. And because we added the Tramps back, we obviously had to add a copy of Chernobog as well, as the three of those just synergize great together. Alright, so we're still running a little bit of spice in 2 copies of Remember Who You Are. This is one of the best cards in this deck, and it overperforms in most cases. You still have the option of pulling 2 of them in your opening hand, which I will admit sucks. But having 2 copies makes it more consistently that you'll find it, and it's such a good card in almost every matchup. I prefer this over the Clarabelle Shift line, which a lot of people are playing, I've noticed. I just think the Clarabelle Shift line is too telegraphed. If they see the 1-drop and the 3-drop, they know you're going to play the big one. So they will do their best to remove that as soon as they can, so that you cannot play the Clarabelle in time to really get value from it. So that's why I have opted to play 2 copies of Remember Who You Are. As always, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to give me a like and subscribe to the channel. I will be posting a lot of Lorcana content in the near future. And thanks again.